Sahana bhavatu, Sahana bhunaktu, Saha viryam karavavai, Tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Well, there was some question, was there? Yes.
Okay, it was me. I put up a comment about how, because it's difficult for me to get to the center, how much I realize that it's so important for me to be able to access the resources online, particularly the ones that go back 7 years. They're still very valuable and worth listening to again and reading over the notes. And what I wrote there was that I often listen to the Gayatri mantra, but I did read somewhere that it shouldn't really be used after sunset. And I was just looking for some clarity on that.
It was you. You mentioned Sandhya, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Good, 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 good. Let me just see what Sini has to say about it in the group. Sancha. That's where Sanja was mentioned. Back to your answer. Okay. All good. All right. Thank you. Okay. The word Sandhya is short for Sandhya Vandanam. And of course, it refers to a salutation to twilight. Now, twilight in the sense that it could be evening, it could be morning, but you can understand that it's all orientated around Surya, the sun. Gayatri mantra is dedicated to Savitri. It comes out in the Gayatri meter as Savitur. So what is Savitri? We can interpret Savitri as that aspect of the sun that is vivifying. Now, of course, it's common to wonder at the sun's rising, setting, the midday, and so on. And when we look, for example, at the Neolithic cultures, such as we find in Ireland, in Newgrange and other Neolithic structures, we see that there's a great emphasis on where the sun is rising, at what time of year it's rising, when it's setting, and so on. So this is not just an observation that we find in that culture. We find it everywhere. The sun is a marvel. And actually, most people think the sun is a gas, but in fact, the sun is probably a liquid. Now, that's a controversial statement, but I think it has a lattice, and I think there's great evidence to show that it is. But the wonderful thing about it is how it radiates, and without it, it gives us light, it gives us life. All the qualities that we give a personal God, we give to the sun. The sun knows every corner, it radiates everywhere, it's omnipresent, it's beautiful, and its beauty is not fixed. So we'll find that the morning sunrise is different from the evening sunset. And we can divide the whole day, because a day is a solar day. A day is simply our watch or clock's map of the sun's movement, as it were. I mean, now we know, of course, the sun is not the one that's moving, but it looks like that. The sun has often been described as something like a swan going across the sky, or a chariot going across the sky. These are some ancient metaphors for it. but it is definitely a life giver. We're all running on solar energy. So we have to acknowledge that. Now, what is the significance of Sandhya and Gayatri? Gayatri refers to a kind of a meter, something that is recited in a certain metrical way. And the actual Gayatri mantra begins with Tat Savitur. The rest are Mahavyaratis, that is great sayings, Bhu Bhuva Swaha. And these are repeated in the beginning to give us a total background picture of the whole thing. Because our whole world, like the rising and setting of the sun, is divided into three areas of consciousness. We are awake, no doubt. I'm sure, I hope we all are. And then we drift off and we go into a blank called a deep sleep. And then we have something in between, which is a mixture of sleep and memory. We call it a dream. So the rule about three worlds everywhere is quite significant, because what happens on the microcosm happens on the macrocosmic scale also. So what do we mean by Bhu? Bhu means the earth, literally, but it's really all the things made from solids. We can say in the modern context that it is the whole observable universe, and we don't know what's beyond it, but we infer that there's something way, way beyond it. Suha. And Suha is that heavenly region that is not really a physical location. It is something like that area beyond, in the area of sleep, something beyond our own individual consciousness, that suggests other beings, even in parallel with our own universe. And then there must be some interspace in between. And we can see that as a vast void of the universe. Most of the universe is empty. Now we are told, modern science tells us, that it's not completely empty. Well, we see that there's something like some movements are going on, some fluctuations going on, but largely it's empty. Something like, let's say, your bank account, which is sometimes full, sometimes empty, and sometimes in between. It's not a constant thing, but mostly it's empty. So the Sandhya is a way of connecting our attention to the divine at specific auspicious moments of the day, namely when the sun rises, or that aspect of the sunrise, just before the sun rises and sun sets. But that's not the end of it, because there's also a midday. So the Sandhya is practiced, let's say, about 3 times a day, and can be practiced more than that, because the midday is there, the morning is there, but mid-morning is there, also mid-afternoon is there. And also the junction of day and night occurs from midnight onwards. Now, I probably have mentioned before that in the Jewish tradition, the day does not begin when the sun rises. The day begins the night before in anticipation, expectation of the sunrise. And in Christianity, this is taken as a dramatic replay of Christ rising, Christ setting, if you will. That is why we see that December is registered as Christ's birthday, but we find, of course, it is the winter solstice. It is the whole celebration of the sun's glory, and was relevant in Rome in times of early Christianity for those Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, the unconquering sun. So Savitur is the thing that vivifies us, gives us life. It is one of the Aditis, it is one of the deities But we have to be careful. It's not something separate. It's simply the sun in its beautiful aspect in the morning, about to give us life, in the evening, about to settle us down in anticipation of the next sunrise, and at midday, the blazing glory of this sun. In Africa, we can't do it in Ireland, but in Africa, any major decision to be done, we say, please do it at midday. 12 o'clock midday, do it. The sun is directly overhead. I've discovered, of course, here in Ireland and Europe in general, the great highlight of the day is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the summer. So it's a slightly different geographical location. Now, if you want to be orthodox, you perform the Sandhya as a puja. What does it mean? Well, it means that if meditation is difficult and you're ritualistically inclined, you do a ceremony that is dedicated to the repetition of the Gayatri mantra. It includes it, but it also has all the various components of a sacrifice or a puja or a worship. That means that we begin by chanting a little bit. We begin by achamana, we have to have the various utensils, the panchapatra, a set of holy utensils for Hindu rituals, the ritualistic spoon, and so on and so forth. We have to make sure that there's a good seat, an asana. We have to make sure that a japa mala for practice is there. We have to make sure that there's a holy mark on the head, and all these various preparations. And then you see, we then can do the Sandhya Vandanam, which is taken from mantras from the Vedas, but we also have to practice the pranayama. We have to practice the reverence to the mantra itself. There are ritualistic sippings. There is the resolve that has to be given. All of these are there, but we can short circuit that and say, at these Sandhya times, these are the times when we should prepare for meditation. We should prepare the mind, because these are beautiful times of the day. There are times when quiet settles in. In the evening time, you won't find any birds chirping. Maybe one or two here and there, night birds. But largely, they've all gone home. They've gone to their nests. Their search for food is gone. No more flying. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. It's as if the whole of the species within nature is pausing in order to worship. And the Gayatri mantra being repeated at these times is significant, because Gayatri being a meter, but the Gayatri mantra is dedicated to Savitur. That is, we can say, the Supreme dressed up like the sun, full of vitality. So when we take this mantra and we see how it is, and I think there was something there in Sisters and Brothers, some recordings, was it? And I think Ophelia gave a recording there, which is absolutely correct in its pronunciation. The next question then that arises is, should it be absolutely correct? Should the pronunciation be correct? What happens if you cannot pronounce this properly? Well, there is a school of thought which says that if you don't pronounce it properly, then there's a lot of the merit is gone, because of the meter in which it is spoken or in which it is recited. There is a certain sanctity to it. But that aside, there is a school of thought, and I'm with that, that says, yes, repeat the mantra and meditate on its meaning. And of course, the repetition of Gayatri mantra is no substitute for your own instructions about morning and evening meditation. Morning and evening meditation should follow some steps. Much of it is in terms of preparation. The first step, of course, is not sitting. The first step is the time in between these various sun events, solar events, morning, midday, and evening. And at that time, of course, the mind has to be quiet. It's not possible if in between 99.99% of your day is all to do with quarreling or squabbling or impure thoughts or agitated thoughts or thoughts of interpersonal difficulties and so on. Then naturally, when you sit for meditation, all of this will crowd in for your attention and there'll be a fight. And that internal fight is registered, oh, I'm sorry, I can't meditate. My mind is going all over the place. I have a jumping mind. Well, you see, you have to make sure that 99.99% of your day is well catered for. You deal with every problem in situ. And you have a philosophy that says that this game, this event that we call life, is actually a series of plays, a series of events within a game. But behind it all is only one being manifesting in these different ways. Just as there is only one sun as far as we are concerned, and it's manifesting and radiating its rays. And whether we acknowledge it or whether we don't, whether we know it or whether we don't, all our energy is coming from the sun. The sun is beaming everywhere, and often we take it for granted. I'm told, particularly if you have in a household a teenager in the holiday period, let's say, where they tend to sleep in a blackout condition for long, prolonged hours. They don't know if the sun is rising or setting or what. But these are moments for deep appreciation and thankfulness. You know, when we do the asanas in Hatha Yoga, an important component will be the Surya Namaskar, the sun salutation. So again, it's worshipping the sun with an element of physical movement. Now, of course, the water offering is one of the most important components of this worship. And particularly if you happen to be in water and witnessing the sunrise and the sunset. Should you say the Gayatri mantra after the sun has gone down? Well, I'm not sure if there's any point. It's not that it's wrong, because you can use this Gayatri mantra at any time with great benefit. But it's not a substitute, of course, for your personal mantra given by a guru, for example. And we are told that all mantras merge into the Gayatri, and the Gayatri merges into the pranava, that means Om. So let us see this Gayatri mantra dedicated to Savitri, this aspect of the sun. It's actually attributed to that great sage Vishwamitra. It's also known, of course, because of its subject matter, as the Savitri mantra. And it's a sacred mantra taken from the Rig Veda. It's taken from the Rig Veda, the Mandala 3:62:10, if you want a quotation, and dedicated to this deity, Savitri. It is also known as the mother of the Vedas, because it is the primary mantra. It is a Vedic mantra. There are two types of mantras, the Tantric mantra and the Vedic mantra. And of course, the term Gayatri also refers to type of mantra which follows the same Vedic meter as this Gayatri mantra. And of course, there are many such Gayatris for various aspects of that one supreme present, and for various gods and goddesses and so on. And furthermore, Gayatri is also the name of the goddess of the mantra. So we know that this is widely quoted. We know where it comes from. We know that there's a formula ahead of the actual mantra, which forms four words, if you like, or sounds: Om, Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha. And these are known as the Mahavyarti, or the great mystical utterances. Now, we should not repeat any mantras, be they Veda mantras, Vedic mantras, Tantric mantras, without really understanding the meaning. You know, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, one means of concentration is repetition of the Om and meditating on its meaning. Otherwise, we may as well repeat rhubarb cabbage and have no meaning to it. And the more carefully we repeat it, the more we're aligned to the originators or the original thought behind it. So let us see, let us examine this mantra. There are so many different interpretations because it is a mantra that has words but not necessarily any connectedness. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahe Dhyo Yo Na Prachodayat. We meditate on the glory of that being who has produced this universe. May she enlighten our minds, is one interpretation given by Swami Vivekananda. We can, in a meditative way, appreciate this. We meditate on the glory of that being. Which being? Whenever we say that in the Vedic language, if you will, it is referring to the supreme principle. So we know what it's aimed at. So we meditate on the supreme soul as the life-giving, glorious one. Now, glory is put as a devasya, glory, jnana swarupa. It's a feminine or female trait. In other words, it is the rays, if you like. If you use the sun as an image for the supreme, it's the rays, it's the glory. What is the purpose of a sun without the glory that it radiates? And that significantly is feminine. So we meditate. Why should we meditate? What should we meditate on? That it is a life giver, that it is radiant, that it is beautiful, that it is omnipresent, it knows every corner, that it doesn't seek any reward, it beams regardless of whether we explore the whole world, it still goes on. And so that Supreme Soul is worthy of meditating on, because it's the life-giving, glorious one who is fit to be worshipped. Fit to be worshipped, Varinyam, fit to be worshipped. You know, the original meaning of God comes from the Germanic hud, which comes from the Sanskrit hutam, one worthy of making an offering to. So fit to be worshipped, why? Because it removes our ignorance. Bhargo, remover of sins and ignorance. So we have so far that supreme soul, that Paramatma, Savitur, as being seen as the Surya, or that aspect within the sun, something like the sun, using the sun as an analogy. He's shining, all things shine, says the Upanishads. Varinyam, fit to be worshipped, and remove our sins and ignorance, Bhargo. And Dimahi, we meditate on what? On the Devasya, on the glory. And then Yona prachodayat, that which our buddhi, dio, our buddhi, our intellect, may be enlightened or inspired by this. In other words, may that one behind the sun, may that one also enlighten our minds. Now, that means that this prayer is a very complete prayer because, first of all, it acknowledges the necessity not to take things for granted, but to reflect, to meditate on what? On the Supreme Soul represented as the sun. That's easy because the sun rises every day, the sun sets every day, there's a midway point every day. If we want, we can divide the day up further into mid morning, mid afternoon. We can go as far as midnight as well. And by splitting up the day in a liturgical way, it leads us to constantly remember the Supreme. What is spiritual practice? It is constant remembrance, bringing the attention back constantly throughout the day until we become saturated with this divine. And so this is a glorious one. We therefore are fit to be worshipped. What does worship consist of? Consists of offering in a sense of thankfulness, giving without expecting any receipt, non-demanding love, just giving for the sake of giving. And in return, this is a remover of our ignorance, bhargo, remover of sins and ignorance. So may that one also enlighten our intellect. Why our intellect? Because buddhi, our intellect, is the only one, the only one that reflects the full glory of the Supreme. It itself is the one that enlightens, in other words, that opens the way for the glory of what is there below at the deepest level to express itself well. So these are the principles of the Gayatri Mantra broken down, and we can see how important they are. Each syllable, the Gayatri Mantra specifies 3 steps or padas of 8 syllables each. And so we can get into the restoration, the metrical restoration of this by saying Varenyam, that is, it's a tetrasyllable aspect of it, Varenyam, like that, Varenyam, like that. Now, where does this fit into our spiritual practice in terms of a basic instruction that we should be attentive to this supreme principle within us in the morning and in the evening at the least, minimal, when things are quiet, when things are naturally the moment of the Sandhya, that is naturally quiet times where things are auspicious because the whole of nature knows it. When the birds start and they awaken at different times in the year, but it's all related to a kind of song of praise, if you will, of the sun rising. And we get from everything or anything whatever we put in. So we start by dwelling on the anticipation of the sun, not the sunrise itself, the anticipation of it. In Western Christian liturgy, it is called the matins, morning, is way before the sunrise. It sets up a sense of anticipation of the sun that represents the glorious deity rising. So then Lauds comes. The sun actually rises. It gives us the opportunity to do some praise. And we have to be careful to follow the competent teacher's instruction on this, which is to steer the mind, steer the attention on a pleasant journey inwards, canalizing our attention until we arrive at a central point, typically where our ideal of the Supreme is, until we gradually merge into it, until nearness becomes oneness. That point of oneness is what we call meditation. The rest we call preparation, or at least I call preparation, because it is constructing your runway to take a flight above the clouds. So we take that runway, we prepare the runway very carefully, and then we steer the attention gradually into the more and more subtle areas of whatever object we're meditating on. The sun is a very easy symbol. Sometimes I say to people, you see, if you cannot think of a form of God, well, at least you have the sun. The sun is an old, very old, tried and tested symbol of the glory of the self. And then if we can imagine that internalized as a kind of point of light and bring the attention in toward that, just as the rays of the sun get drawn in toward the twilight of the evening and reemerges in full glory the following day, the following morning. Following this pattern, we learn to intersperse the day with some sacred thought. And that helps us to neutralize all the fears and doubts and all the other human emotional difficulties that we may have in life. Spiritual life is a question of taking the opportunities to remind ourselves continuously of the divine presence that is here and that is now. We have multiple opportunities to do it. Every second really is an opportunity to do it. But I understand, of course, the mind is occupied with whatever occupation the hands are also occupied in. And so we should be having this constant remembrance continuously. Now you may say, how can I repeat a mantra, any mantra, but preferably the mantra, your individual mantra, 24 hours of the day? You see, the Swami Purnananda, he continuously says, repeat your mantra 24 hours of the day. How is it possible? Well, you see, if you cannot do it all the time, you can do it before an activity, you can do it after an activity. And you can punctuate the day with this. Now, as you're constantly repeating your mantra, at some stage or other, even when the mind is occupied with some other thing, unconsciously you'll still be repeating it. And by repeating God's name, you're attracting God toward you and introducing the presence of the divine into your working, waking life, into every moment of the day. What a wonderful thing that is. Doing all activities in the constant companionship of the divine. So this is the use of it. Gayatri mantra, this can also be repeated, and it's significant when it's repeated in morning and evening and midday and so on, but because it's related to the activities of the sun. In answer to your question, can be done after? Yes, of course. It can be done at midnight. It can be done standing straight. It can be done standing on your head. It can be done continuously all the time. It's okay. There's no restriction on that. But of course, it is associated with that type of Sandhya, which is to do with worship, formal worship. But we don't have to go through those elaborate things necessarily. We don't have to change our cultural norm, but it is necessary to steer our attention as much as possible toward this great, great object of our whole life, this divine. And this Gayatri mantra encapsulates the whole thing, really. It encapsulates the three states of consciousness. It encapsulates the whole of existence. physical as well as uh, um, non-physical things, that worlds that we know of, worlds that we don't know of. And then it particularly hones in on that particular aspect of universal glory, that supreme looking like the shining sun, giving us life. We can meditate for hours, of course, on this life giver. And because when we work, we're only working through the energy and the light of this life giver, that it's always an opportunity to remind us. Now, we go a stage further. If you're able to see the divine as the source of the sun, making the sun shine, operating within the sun, where the sun itself doesn't know it, where weaving a body around itself, as it were, called the sun, standing there even before the sun existed, giving its shining aspect to the sun. If we can see that, we can also see it in the internal heat of the body, the digestive fire. We can see it in the physical fire. We can see it in the electrical current. We can see it in the computer that is there, or the phone which is there that you're watching this on. The whole electromagnetic wave system. We can see it in stars. We can see it in anything that is glittering, anything that is shining. And most of the world is shining. Even if you think that there's no star inside you, then certainly the eyes are shining. And certainly every cell of the body is shining. The complex system that we call human body, when we break it down into individual cells, we find a wonderful, wonderful, absolute miracle that we simply take for granted. When we see every cell of the body as a kind of fractured or fragmented, or a kind of a sparkling version of that supreme, glittering like that, like so many pieces of glitter. When you give it to a child and you get them to do some glitter work on a piece of work, a work of art, you may find glitter all over the place. But every single cell of the body is an echo, because we are built, we are made in the image and likeness of that supreme. What does that mean? It means in every aspect: physical, mental, every kind of aspect, everything. We are made completely in the image and likeness of that supreme. Forgetfulness of this is called ignorance, avidya. So the antidote is constant remembrance. And the only antidote to ignorance is knowledge. Not intellectual knowledge, but inner wisdom, accessing this divine within, from within. So if you're repeating the Gayatri, continue. It's not a substitute for the instructions given by a teacher, but nevertheless, any form of worship is good. And since this Supreme is subtle, since the Atman is subtle, since the principle of Atman being one with Brahman is a subtle concept, a subtle truth, we require a million tools. Select your own one which is appealing to you. So that's what I would say. If it comes out as Gayatri Mantra, good. If it comes out as Beethoven music, good. If it comes out as gazing at the objects of nature, good. If it comes out as walking in forests and mountains, good. If it comes by seeing this divinity in all humanity. When a child is born, we have this internal apparatus that doesn't judge it. We simply coo and make adult noises that often probably baffle the child, but anyway, the child responds, no doubt. We don't have any judgment on animals. You don't take your pet dog and make a judgment. You accept dogs and cats, domestic animals, wild animals for what they are. And we think that they're cute. And we put them in zoos and we charge money for people to look at these animals, to appreciate them. And many of them we think are cute, and many we think maybe not so much. And babies, we think they're cute. You see, if we can see that aspect of life in a baby or in an animal, we can surely see it in humanity. Even though there are bad behaviors going on, but still that sun, that light that lights the sun, is lighting the eyes from within. It is operating as the soul of every single person, every single creature. And we have no business to judge, and we have no business to complain. Well, I hope that covered to some extent the subject matter.
Yes, thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah, good. That's fine. Well, I'll take any other questions if you like.
Swami, something around really setting not positive intentions, but really seeing the possibility and the energy of God through the possibility and the potential that you have in the world. And then you receive news that's a real blow to that, and how you manage that without blaming the self. You haven't worked hard enough, or you haven't stayed present enough.
You see, when you go into a self-blaming thing, it's a past thing. Whatever you've described is in the past tense, isn't it? So there's nothing we can change in the past. We have to accept whatever we did in the past, we have to accept it now. And we have to understand that life is rough and life is not smooth necessarily. There are smooth moments, no doubt. But we do have the capacity to transform. We have the capacity to transform discord into harmony. And we have the capacity to do it, but it takes an extra will sometimes in surprise circumstances. And we have to then remind ourselves of the fundamentals of spiritual life. And that is to notice things going on which formerly we didn't notice at all. We were too preoccupied with other things. Never mind, that's all in the past. When I use something in the past tense, it's gone, it's in the past. You can't correct it, you can't change it. But the present moment you can change. And the future you can change, because the future comprises multiples of these present moments all added up. So put in the glory now, and you'll find that largely it's all glory, and sometimes a few things not. So, no, we think that God is continuously beneficent, but actually, you see, the whole of nature, and nature, all of nature is designed, is meant to go into balance, counterbalance, surprises, responses, and the art of dealing with that is the art of living in the art of spirituality. We take it and see how can we handle it, and last resort, we put it into the divine hands with a sense of self-surrender. This is yours. So I tried to manage something well, but couldn't do it properly. Anyway, you can do it for me. That element of faith is necessary. So the antidote to all of that is faith. We have to have a strong faith. We have to have a strong faith in the intrinsic goodness which we find here and now. We have to faith that we are made in the image and likeness of God. We have to have faith that within us is infinite possibilities are there, not yet manifest. And we have to have the courage and fortitude to handle whatever is happening now with us and accept it, and then put in a harmonious series of thoughts. Apart from any practical activities that we can do in life, the most powerful thing that we have is thought. It is thought which moves faster than a sunbeam. It is thought which mobilizes and creates any current condition which is now. It's produced by thought. Now, to change our thinking is the most important thing. And in order to do that, we have to catch ourselves in a whole internal script which we can classify as negative, either past commiserations or future anticipations. And as soon as we do any of those two things, we escape the glory which is here and now. And along with that comes a kind of internal joy. We can sustain that. We can deliberately beam our goodness and truth and beauty and love and so on, and harmony, simply by repeating the words. You may ask, how can we change our thought? We change our thought by changing our internal script. And as soon as we catch ourselves in a downward spiraling mode, we have to stop the further descent, catch it, and push it upwards. And not only push it up for ourselves, but push the whole environment involved in the spiral. Other people, other places, other events. The whole environment comes with us. So we have to put in the glory which we find here and now. And dwell on that. In terms of, say, physical, most people will be complaining about 1 or 2% of what they have. 98% is actually correct. But the problem is, when something is wrong, we apply it to the whole situation, the whole body or the whole situation, instead of more logically applying it to a small corner. You're reading a book, you spill something on a page. It may be a corner. It's not the whole page. You try to clean it as much as you can on that corner, but you didn't ruin the whole book.
Thank you, Swami.
All right. Well, if there are no further questions, we can leave it there. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thanks, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.